Brown trout, rainbow.
I'm like, grab the camera, Chad. Get that camera out. Finally, I'm going to prove to people. I'm going to show this fish. You know, I'm like, it's just amazing, you know. Yeah, about that. I didn't really bring it. Oh, dude, I was crushed. So the only witness I have to this fish and how amazing it was is Chad. And we pulled the fish out of the middle, and I ate that one too. We were.
It's a little grossed out by that.
I didn't bother. Dude. It was freshly swallowed.
And fly fishing to me is a lot like hunting, and I never thought it would be. But you know, where you're placing the fly or the streamer, you're literally hunting the fish. You know, in the river or the lake.
So a fish inside of the fish.
I got a 2 for 1, dude. I got a 2 for 1.
That's gritty.
Yeah, that's really
That's gritty. My idea of a fly would be when a fish sees it, they just drop their jaw. Like they have to eat it or chase it or follow it or something. And so
that is crafty. That is creative right there. Like jaw-dropping fly.
We're Dropjaw Flies, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Hello, all right. You're listening to The Gritty Bowman, home of gritty bow hunting films, interviews, tall tales, and a wee bit of manly boasting.
I'm South Cox, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Hey, this is Corey Jacobson, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
We born and raised outdoors, and you've been listening to The Gritty Bowman.
There you go.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Jordan.
And you're watching
The Gritty Bowman.
If you like the show, please go to our website at grittybowman.com and subscribe to this podcast and tell your mates and pals about us. Do us a favour and please take a moment to leave us a rating or a review on iTunes or on our YouTube channel. Send your questions and podcast ideas to grittybowman@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can see the video version of this podcast on our website at www.grittybowman.com.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Bowman podcast. I am here with my dear friend, Chad Nelson, and his friend, Jason RV, who's about to become my friend. Now, for those of you who have listened to the podcast, you've seen Chad. We grew up, we went to college together and had some good times, and we've been on some hunts together, and we just went to Prince of Wales in the spring, last spring, and had an awesome hunt. And Chad and I, when we were in college, we were at Rick's College in Idaho together, where I met my wife and he met me. And we went. What did we do? Pretty much every chance we got when we were there.
Man, we hit the Snake River and we were catching trout.
Yes, we were fishing constantly. So this podcast, Chad's been involved in a new project, a new business he's doing, and it's pretty cool. And I wanted to have him on the podcast today to talk about it. And he's been doing some fishing with this Jason character over here, and Jason's really the genius behind this. Chad and I fished a lot, but never knew what we were doing. Still caught a lot of fish because we were fishing in some amazing country, not because we were particularly gifted. But we wanted to talk today. I wanted to get these guys on the podcast and talk about their passion for fishing, what they're doing. And I know a lot of folks that listen to the podcast are big time fishing guys. So this should be good for those guys. I just wanted to bring Chad and Jason on and let them share what they're doing and talk fishing with us. So that said, Jason, I don't really know the story of how you got connected with Chad. So how did that happen?
You know, and my memory's not the greatest, but I believe it was almost 10 years ago that our wives were doing a business together. And so we kind of met through our wives.
We met on a cruise ship, actually.
Really?
Well, our wives were good enough to earn cruises every year through work, and they would take us along. So we met on a sunny day in the Caribbean about 10 years ago.
That's right.
Oh, wow. I had no idea. So then what happened? How did you get him to do the fishing thing with you, Jason?
Well, through conversations and unrelated to fishing, just talking with Chad. I mean, he's a really laid back, fun guy to be around. And that kind of a guy, when you find out he fishes, it could be fun. It could be mayhem. It could be crazy. It's just something that it happened where we just made some plans. Hey, let's go catch a fish.
I was a little worried, actually, about, Chad needs help being interesting. I tease him about having no emotion, like being so laid back. It's just real mellow. And he told me, yeah, Jason's really laid back and easygoing. And I thought, oh no.
Hey, we're the life of the party.
Yeah. What are you going to get? 2 blocks of salt, maybe.
Yeah. Well, so you guys then started fishing together. Did you invite Jason, or Jason, you invite Chad out and do it, or what happened?
Yeah, before Dropjaw came to be, we'd been out a few times fishing, and when I realized I needed to kind of make the switch over to the dark side, meaning fly fishing.
Which we did. We did some. And we looked like 2 retards, like flicking a stick back and forth.
Well, I took Jason, full disclosure here, Brian, I took him to our secret fishing hole on the Snake. And
that's betrayal. Right there.
I heard that podcast too.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
But I might have still caught more fish than him with my old spinner rod and our Panther Martin.
Yeah.
But he caught the bigger ones with this fly rod.
Wow.
And that's when I decided, man, I need to learn to fly fish, because I would catch a lot, but he would always catch the giants.
Wow. Yeah, that's not only that. Fly fishing, I don't know how to describe it, but it just feels cooler. When you catch a fish on a fly rod, and I don't have a ton of experience with this, but when you do, you hold it differently. It's up there in the air. I'm gonna show off how much I don't know about fishing, but it just has this really cool feel to it in a way that you don't get with a heavy spin rod and bait or a lure or something. And it just has a real, I don't know, river runs through a romantic nostalgia kind of feel to it that just, to me, it's like archery hunting versus rifle hunting. I love a good rifle hunt, but archery hunting just has it just has a different feel that I really like. And I think there's some people, like I heard Stephen Ranella talk about how annoying that comparison is, archery to fly fishing, but I really see a comparison there in a lot of ways.
I think there is.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I love about fly fishing, and Jason asked me this just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm so grateful that he introduced me to fly fishing, asked me to be a part of Dropjaw, but he said, hey, after you've been doing this now for several months, what do you think? Fly fishing versus, using a spinner rod. And fly fishing to me is a lot like hunting. And I never thought it would be, but where you're placing the fly or the streamer, you're literally hunting the fish, in the river or the lake. And man, it's so much more enjoyable than just blindly tossing, bait or a spinner out there and hoping that you catch something.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm actually enjoying fly fishing a lot more than I ever did using a spinner rod.
Sweet. So I can see that. Like, when you, Chad, you've sent me some pictures of some ridiculous fish that you guys catch, and sometimes there's like 5 giant fish in the same day. You and I never caught fish that big ever, and never in the same day. So what is this secret, and what's this drop jaw thing you're talking about?
Well, I'm going to defer to the expert here.
All right, Jason, lay it on me. What is drop jaw? And I kind of know, but you know the Gritty Bowman listeners don't know what drop jaw is. So what is drop jaw?
Well, drop jaw was kind of an idea that when you tide flies for a long time, some of them work and some of them don't. But as you progress as a fly tyer, my idea of a fly would be when a fish sees it, they just drop their jaw. Like they have to eat it or chase it or follow it or something. And so
that is crafty. That is creative right there. Like jaw-dropping fly.
Yeah, like the drawbridge just coming down, you can pass.
They just got to take it.
So anyway, that was the ideal. Like that's what I am trying to accomplish. And some of these flies work better than others, but I thought, how far can we go in fly tying? Like how far can we go and make our flies look almost like bait? Because truly, live bait is going to be your best ticket for the biggest fish. It's just the way it is. But as a fly fisher, use flies, what can we do? How far can we go with our flies? And so that's the idea.
How did you get this far? I mean, how did you get into this? Well, first of all, we toyed around with tying some flies. I think it's fascinating. I got some books and some tools and stuff. I did it for like a day and said, this is for the birds. I'll just buy them from some other sucker. So what is it that, got you into tying flies, and how did you evolve? Like, how did you start fly fishing?
That's a good question. In 1983, I believe, I went to spend the summer with my dad in Oregon. He lives in Tigard. And that year, we were big fishermen. We went to go fishing, and I noticed he had a fly rod. And he said, this is what I'm doing now. And he said, in order for me to be the best, most skilled fly fisherman, I think I need to do fly fishing. Because he was progressing. And not to take anything away from guys who spin fish, because there's some dang good spin fishers and bait fishers. We're all having a good time fishing. But for him, it was fly fishing. He wanted to do that.
Like archery and rifle or...
Yeah. So he had this blue suitcase, and I wasn't allowed to touch it. But he would open it up, and there was all kinds of crazy stuff. Feathers, hide, hooks, thread, and it was the coolest thing. I was fascinated by it to watch him tie. And so I tied my first fly, which looked like something you'd find on a lawn that had left the night before. And it was just a black piece of black fuzz. And I took it to a bluegill pond behind our house and caught some bluegill with it. And I was hooked. I was like, I can make stuff that catches fish. And so if you go back to 1983, that was a while ago. And but anyway, where my tying is now, it's fun. I love it. And the one part of the fly that's different are these heads. They look like a fish head, and they kind of they direct the fly in the water, laterally, horizontally, however we want to craft it. And
you can see it for those that are listening, if you look at the video version of the podcast, you can see the flies that Jason's been tying and how they look different. That looks like a fish, dude.
Well, and that's really the idea, but there's still fur and feathers, to go with the fly concept. So, and that's really in a nutshell kind of how I got started and where we're at today.
So what is drop jaw?
So drop jaw, it's an idea basically to make a fly that will catch the biggest fish possible. We give you the best shot, Mm-hmm. People have limited time, limited resources, and for people that want to catch a big fish, and have a really good shot at catching a big fish, I made these heads that they can slip over their fly. So you tie your fly, and then the head is always kind of the cornerstone, like the focal point of the fly. And so if you have a simple way to just put some epoxy or glue on the end of your hook where the hook eye is, and then just slide that on, you have something that really resembles a fish. And just from our research and development that we've had to do, that's what we tell our wives. It's like, it's research.
Work, honey.
It has to be done, sweetheart.
Yeah. And so then you go and catch a whole bunch of fish every weekend at the cabin, basically.
Yeah.
And it's research and development.
It's too busy. Work day, Tuesday, Wednesday.
So these fish, now, how do they, they're some of these are a lot bigger than your typical fly, so how are you using your fly rod with these? And is there anything like, there's a lot of traditional guys out there, right? And they're thinking it's a bug they're throwing on the water. Like even guys will feel like, hey, a woolly bugger isn't even a fly. You kind of jerk it through the water a little bit. It's more like lure fishing. Yeah. So, I mean, how do you feel about that?
Great question again. The traditional fly fishing was horsehair and dry fly 400 plus years ago, and that tradition carried on for a long time. As lines got better, as rods got better, they were able to hold and throw bigger flies and use different techniques. And so there's that early tradition. People still think dry fly is only fly fishing, but really has evolved to cover salt water.
I was going to say, I have friends who fish, who fish with, nymph fish, underwater fly fishing, basically, that are like, hey, that's not even fishing, fly fishing. It's got to be on the surface or it doesn't count. And then you have the guys that are like, that, will use like, use their fly rod kind of like a spin rod, and work the fly through the water instead of just let it drift or float and if you do that, that's not really fly fishing. And right. You kind of have these things where I think we as human beings are in love with technology. Like we're just like little monkeys who love to play with and invent new things. And as technology grows, we can get more and more efficient with either. It's like typically, if I were to compare it to bow hunting, you have your long bow and your traditional bow, your wood arrows with your feathers, and then the next guy is like shooting a traditional bow, a recurve with aluminum arrows and still feathers, and then you got the guy who's shooting, the compound bow, and then the guy that's shooting the high tech elite compound bow, and then mechanical broadheads versus fixed broadheads, and each time you step closer to a higher level of technology, it becomes a little bit easier. It takes some of that challenge away.
You get to question it.
Yeah. And so it becomes down to this question of, what. Obviously, Jason, you love tying flies. And you love taking something you created and catching a fish with it. And not only that, you don't want to just catch a fish. You want to catch a giant fish. Yeah. And so basically you're saying you found a way to do that. All those things, combine all those things together to do what you love to do. And you're not really caught up on whether or not it's a fly on the surface or a fly below the surface or, some of these more traditional things. You're just out there doing what you love to do, and it's a blast.
Yeah. I wouldn't say that I don't dry fly fish, because there's certain times of the year where that's a blast, and I'll still do that. Nymph fishing is, if you want to catch a pile of fish, that's the way to do it for sure. But there's something about taking these flies, casting them and stripping them back and making them look like a fish and having a giant fish, like you said, just slam it. It is so fun. And that's really, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. It's about getting that big fish. And I know with your show and your listeners, they're so aware of that, because that's usually what they're trying to do too. Is it's not about the 2-point, or in most cases, it's the challenge of getting a bigger specimen.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the hunting for food scenario, right? And then there's hunting for the challenge. And I think it gets pretty complicated, the reality, when you start getting into why people hunt and their motivations. And it can range from very ego-driven motivations all the way down to just wanting to be in the outdoors, to killing it, bringing home the best organic meat for your family that you can provide, right? It just runs the gamut. But most hunters, I think, as part of the evolution of being a hunter, after they've done it, there's a lot of most hunters I know sort of move toward wanting to, as they get better and better at something, they tend to go from a rifle to a bow, from a compound to a traditional, from a traditional to, just making it harder and harder for them. Or they try to seek a more cagey, wise, difficult animal too. So it's sort of, regardless, what they're doing is either, when they call it quote unquote trophy hunting, they're looking for a deer or an elk that, or a sheep or something that has evaded everyone else. That is really, really hard to get. Or the other thing, they're shooting a young deer, but with equipment and tools, and they're putting limitations on themselves by the equipment they choose to use. Either way, what they're seeking is an adventure. It's a challenge. It's something that they're chasing. And so, to me, maybe you're not on the end where you're trying to go as primitive as you can with equipment and lures and ties, but really you're also going after the smartest and the toughest fish there are to catch.
Exactly right.
Which is not, anybody who fly fishes, knows isn't that easy.
Well, and the better you get, whether you're a hunter or a fisherman, better you get at it, the more you know. It's easier to go out and fill a tag.
Yeah.
But for most guys, the better they get, they want that challenge, that experience. They want to hunt for a week versus filling a tag the first day. And so you want that challenge, whether it's a mature elk, a mature buck, or in our case, our challenge right now is what we call cutty quest. We love to fish for cutthroat.
Yeah.
And we're after a 10-pound plus, double digit in weight cutthroat. And so, for us, this is kind of the ticket, right here is a big streamer, an articulated double hook, triple hook streamer that those fish just can't resist.
That's pretty fun. What I think is neat about some of this stuff, it's like setting my daughter up, who can now pull a 40-pound bow with a compound, so she can actually go out right now and actually set her up in a ground blind where conditions are so good that she has a really good chance of harvesting a nice deer with her bow. Something that a 12-year-old most likely would have difficulty doing with a traditional bow, right? And I think when you're dealing with kids, and especially kids today, they're looking for a little more to get them hooked, on hunting or fishing. They need to be successful. You know what I mean? And so setting them up with a good tag in a good area is part of it. Getting them the right equipment and something that they can be very successful. Setting them up to succeed is, to me, a big deal, So I kind of like this, where I could take my daughter out with a fly rod, and it seems like she'd probably have more success than she would with trying to float the fly just perfectly on the water.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a neat thing. So tell me about Dropjaw and what you're doing. Is that the name of your company?
Yes.
Dropjaw flies.
Dropjaw flies. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and you're tying the flies. So what is it? When did you start this thing? Wasn't it just
Well, this happened. So we took our families to a cabin in Idaho, and we caught a lot of fish. And I was just showing Chad some of the flies I had been tying, and this was kind of before Dropjaw started, but was this exact fly in particular right here. And I hit. This is a you can buy this head. This is a metal kind of a type of a deal that you can buy, and it's just flat color metal.
Yeah.
And I was painting it because I wanted to have it look more like a fish. So in my mind, that was like the coolest thing that was out there at the time. So I showed this to Chad, and Chad showed it to his wife, and she was like, "Oh, yeah, that's okay." And I was like, "What?" Inside, I was like, "Whoa!"
Look what I did, man. What's your? How come they're not excited?
Exactly. So I went home the next week, and I'd had this idea to do heads for seriously a decade, and just had not been able to do it for whatever reason. And so I thought, I am going to make my flies look like a fish. And so some of the first ones are right here that I had cast out of resin and then painted. And people really liked them. And when it came time to fish them, they worked out great. I had some really good success with it. And because Chad has kind of the same schedule, a huge passion for the outdoors, hunting, fishing. And I just thought we should probably try and get this off the ground and start it. And so
Pretty cool, dude. Like, we should, if you're watching this podcast, folks, or if you're listening to it, and you want to see what these heads look like, they're right here on the video, and you can see. And then we'll put some links in and some pictures too over the top of this, so folks can see it.
Yeah, and they can follow us on Instagram or our website, dropjawflies.com.
So you started tying your first ones like that. So how did you get to where you are right now? And how do they compare, Jason, like to what you first started with to what you're doing now?
Now with these flies, there is a high degree of possibility that we're going to go to a river, a lake, throw these and catch fish. It's just very rare do we have a day where we don't. And the flies from 2 decades back was always a crapshoot. Barring a black woolly bugger or a tried and true double bunny, you'd get fish with those, but it wasn't to the same degree as what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen the pictures.
Ridiculous. I mean, really, those are some giant fish. Speaking of which, it looks like you've got one on your wall behind you. And who decorated the set right there? Because I just don't know if it's the sort of thing you guys did.
It definitely wasn't either one of us.
I'd have a newspaper for a background, and yeah,
we'd be sitting on the couch.
So, what's the story behind that fish on the wall there?
So that was 10 years ago, and
Jason set the state record.
Well, and this was a different. The state record fish was a tiger trout a while ago. This was a cutthroat at a Strawberry Reservoir that caught on a streamer, but cutthroat. And I don't keep very many fish. This was just a day my little brother was with me. He was so excited that we'd caught this big fish, and he didn't want to let it go. And I thought, I don't keep these, so I did. I kept this one and had it mounted, but. From my days in Oregon, on the Trask River and some of those coastal streams with my dad catching coastal cutthroat, there's just something special about all the different subspecies of cutthroat to me, and I wanted to have one. So for all you guys out there that release everything, I apologize, but I've only kept a few to mount, or 2.
Well, and that's interesting too, because you get into catch and release, and there's a very strong culture in the fly fishing community to catch and release, and Chad and I have a different background. We like to eat our freaking fish, and letting them go just seems counterintuitive.
I know.
A lot of our fish hadn't been out of the water an hour before we had a fire lit on the edge of the river, and we were roasting those on a stick.
I mean, that's just how we did it, you know? I mean, we just like to eat what we caught. And we did let, we did let some go, especially when they were, they didn't meet, you know, the fishing regs, you know, and stuff. But man, not my favorite thing to do. And as I got older, and I've fished here on the Deschutes River in Oregon, you know, letting them go after doing a little fly fishing is it's more fun. But I still like to keep fish. And so, what's the deal with all these fly fishing guys who gotta like let the fish go? There's nothing wrong with eating a fish, man. I'm just saying.
I think that comes into the sport part of it, you know, because with our limited time and our resources, like if you go to a river and you're fishing, you don't catch anything, and it's because people have taken so many fish out, then that's the problem. And I think it's more aligned with the sport of being able to go and catch fish rather than feeling bad that you killed it. Right. Because, you know, a river especially, it's just so concentrated. People can get to it, and they really can deplete the resource rather quickly if it's not kept in check.
I agree, but I think that what's interesting about fly fishing is that there is definitely within the community, there's an attitude that catch and release. What I was going to say is that there's regulations for a reason. Right, the fishing game, Fish and Wildlife, they go out and they go, okay, this is how many fish are in the river, this is how many guys can take, this is how many guys buy a license and fish, and they kind of calculate that out. Fly fishing is one of those things where there's certain rivers like where Chad and I fished where you couldn't keep any, you know, or the limit was 1, and it had to be X big, and otherwise it was all catch and release, and where you could only fly fish with a barbless hook. You couldn't do any other type of fishing. Now, I think that's pretty cool. They're managing that river for a resource, and they're taking care of those fisheries. But I also feel like there's other places where the rules are a little different, right? And it's legal to catch a fish and keep it. I want to be able to do that and trust the fisheries that they're managing those fisheries for that kind of take. But yeah, in the fly fishing community though, there's a lot of attitudes around fishing where that it's almost like the fly fishing community doesn't trust the management of the biologists, you know, their predictions, their harvest rates and all that. They're like, no, we're going to do this on our own, and we're going to blackball anyone who calls themselves a fisherman but actually eats their fish. You know, they're like ostracized from the community.
Yeah, there is.
But I kind of say it jokingly, but I see that a lot, and it's not just fishing is one of those things. You can't go and shoot a deer and then let it go, you know. But in fishing, you certainly can. You can catch it, enjoy it, let it go. And I think there's a lot of like, it feels good to let it go. Sometimes you just don't want to kill that fish, and it's nice to just catch it, admire it, and go. And then go, you know what? Be free, little Nemo. Go swim upstream and have some. Get yourself some and lay some more eggs. You know, babies. You know, it's like
that's right.
There's just something that's nice about that. But then there are times where I'm like, you are going to taste awesome with my lemon. Little lemon squeeze and my seasonings, and I can't wait to eat you on the bank of the river with a fire. And
you bet.
So anyway, how do you feel about eating the fish you catch?
Were you going to say something? Because I want to comment on that too.
No, go ahead.
Well, Brian, I think if I'm in a spot where it's okay to take fish, and I'm prepared to take care of that fish correctly so that when I clean it, it goes on ice immediately, and I have enough ice time to make it home to cook it, then I'm all for it. But killing a fish and then taking a gamble, like in a long hot hike or where it could be wasted, I definitely will draw the line there and not do it.
Nice.
We like backcountry fishing. I mean, if we see another person where we're fishing, it ticks us off. So we like to hike. I mean, we'll put in 3 to 5 miles on our outings, try to get back and remote. So, I mean, we have to use good judgment too. If it's, the early part of our day, we're going to be out for another 4 or 5 hours. Absolutely. We can't keep the fish.
Yeah.
So we like to catch them about 20 minutes before we're calling it a wrap. And then, we can preserve the fish and it doesn't spoil on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And by the way, the only reason I'm a part of Dropjaw Flies, he said he cleans his fish. No, I clean his fish, and then I get to work with Jason, and I keep his waders clean and scrub the mud off them.
Yeah, I can see that right now, Chad, the servant boy. I'm having a hard time picturing that.
Yeah.
I heard Stephen Ranilla talk about this on a podcast with Ryan Callahan up in Montana, and they were talking about fishing and fly fishing, and it was a very interesting podcast. You guys scoot closer together. Make sure you're in the camera. There you go, shoulder to shoulder.
I don't know if Brian's doing this on purpose.
I think this is a joke.
No, I want to make sure we don't chop you guys off on the ends there. So
we slowly drifted apart during the podcast.
Yeah, Mr. Macho's over there. I'm saying you just need to be shoulder to shoulder. Just embrace it.
All right.
So I was saying I listened to this podcast and it was pretty cool. But he talked about sort of that elitist attitude of the fly fisherman versus the spin fisherman and stuff like that, which is the same thing happens in archery, between your traditional bow hunter and your archery and your compound bow hunter and stuff like that, which really bothers me. I just don't think there's, if it's legal and it's ethical and so forth, and somebody is at this level and enjoys this activity, you shouldn't look down on them for it. And along those lines, he was talking about sometimes how the fly fishing community might look down on the bait fishing community because, bait fishers keep their fish, and these fly fisher guys are letting them go. And he was talking about, so he brought up something that was really interesting that I hadn't thought about, which was his brother, Renilla's brother is a fish biologist, and he said something about how they've evaluated how many fish a guy catches in a day on a guided float trip, right? And how many he lets go. And then what the survival rate of the fish are. And they were figuring the loss rate was around 30% or even higher 3 to 4 out of 10 fish die after they're released. And if a guy on a boat, fly fisher guy catches 50 fish that day, he's taken more out of the river than the guy who then bait fished to his limit of 3 and went home. And it kind of is interesting. And so there's certain ways you should handle the fish, certain ways that you take care of that fish when you pull it out, take a photo of it, or take the hook out of it. And all of that plays a role, of course. And you have some guys that are probably more experienced than others. The goal is to take care of those fisheries, though, to take care of the wildlife, to take care of that resource that you love to partake in and have a part of. What do you think about fishing in general and important fish management type of things?
Oh boy, it's everything really these days, where we have a little part in management because we can make a call whether we take a fish or not. But the biologists, they really need to have a balance between, the predator, prey, and then you add in the fisherman factor because they're going to have an effect on the mortality rate. And it's super important. I think a guy should take every opportunity to learn how to handle a fish when they catch it if they plan to release it. We could do a whole show just on that.
Yeah.
It's really simple, but there's so many techniques to use when you catch a fish, how you handle it, whether or not it's going to survive when you put it back in the water.
Now, you guys are spoiled because you're fishing Idaho. Is that Utah?
Idaho, Utah, Montana, primarily.
Yeah, that's crappy fly fishing country. How do you guys get by?
I admit,
You should.
nobody go there.
No, for real though. Like, I mean, those are some tremendous places to fly fish. And in all those places you go, can you see the different ways that the fisheries are managed, that resources managed, and do some states do a better job than others?
Yeah, I think there's a huge push in Yellowstone National Park. We'll just use that kind of as an example. The cutthroat trout have a certain habitat that they need to be able to propagate and live. So many other fish can survive in multiple different kinds of habitat. And to protect the cutthroat, there's a huge push there to get rid of invasive species in different streams. And so you see a lot of effort being made there. But in Utah, an example, it's been a tradition for people to go out as families and take a whole bunch of fish and harvest them. And generally, the bag limits have been really liberal until maybe the last 10 years. The rules are more specific to each fishery about how many you can take or how many cutthroat or whatever. So you see a lot of effort around the West to protect spawning cutthroat because they do depend on a certain habitat.
So, on the cutthroat thing, what is it about cutthroat that really gives you gets you excited? Like, there's all these different fish out there that you could fish for. Why is cutthroat that one that you're really interested in? The one that it really trips your trigger. Why isn't it like, a brown trout?
Gotcha. Do you? I know I have a response for that, but I don't want to leave you. Do you?
Well, I've got two, brown and cutties. Cutties are so beautiful, and browns just seem to be more elusive. At least where I've fished historically. So catching a big brown, that gets me excited too.
I was gonna say, like, for me, I've been fascinated with brown trout and catching one for forever. And when I see a beautiful giant brown trout, that I just am so excited. It just is the coolest looking fish to me.
Yeah.
But cutthroat, I like too. But Jason, what is it you're like? Well, before that, Chad, what is it about cutthroat for you?
Well, for me, really, it's just the beauty of them. And, there's out west, there's different species of cutthroat, and, they all look a little different, but I think they're the prettiest trout. And when you catch one and it's all colored up, those bright red gills and, the silver back, I just think they're gorgeous.
Yeah, the beauty is spectacular. When you really look into their skin, and it might sound corny, but it's just the most beautiful metallics and pearls and colors. They're just gorgeous. Like, if God had art, this is it.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I grew up hunting and fishing Oregon. This is just where, and unfortunately, a lot of our rivers are stocked fish. There are not a lot of wild trout and native trout streams. And when Chad and I were in Idaho going to school up there, and we went up toward Yellowstone, and we were fishing on Henry's Fork of the Snake, and we were for the first time catching these wild native trout. The experience was utterly different than catching a stocked trout with a clipped fin here in Oregon. it's not, these fish are fed a bunch of, I don't know, dog food, and then they're like dropped in a river, and you go to catch one, it's not the same as these wild fish. And we experienced, I was like, not, the fight was incredible. Them jumping out of the water, the colors that come off of them, and then you pull it in and you look at that fish. We were hooked instantly. The fish, just looking at them, it was like looking at a completely different animal than what I caught in Oregon. They were just kind of silver and blah and gray skinned, and these wild ones were just absolutely amazing and stunning.
Yeah. Brian, my dad and I fished the Alsea River. Are you familiar with that? And caught some beautiful coastal cutthroats in my younger fly fishing days. And the Yellowstone cutthroat, the Bear Lake strain of cutthroat, the Colorado River. There's so many, and they're so beautiful. But the thing that gets me is that they evolved out here in the West, or they were just here all the way from the beginning, where the brown and the rainbow were introduced. And I love those fish too. Don't get me wrong, because that big brown or a big rainbow, I'll take it. But out here in our streams, Oregon, out west in general, those cutthroat were there. That's their home, and it's just so cool to go to a stream, catch one, and know that it has been there. Its ancestors have been there since the beginning. It's just a cool feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about brook trout?
Love them.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous fish.
Love them.
Yeah.
But I don't love them in cutthroat streams.
Well, and that brings up an interesting point. How do you deal with, there's these cutthroat, all these streams, like in Idaho, I remember when we were there, Chad, and this is a long time ago, some of these cutthroat streams were just being overtaken by the other species of fish. And that's you could keep these others if you caught them, but you had to let the cutthroats go. How I really haven't fished for years. I'm too busy big game hunting to I love fishing. I just never happens for me. But it's something I want to get back into, and now that Chad is deeply involved, it's going to happen. He's sucking me in. I can feel it already. So I'll be fly fishing again soon, and spending way too much money. But
when you fish with us, you don't have to spoon with Anthony at night.
Yeah, let's not, dude. I'm gonna have to edit that out. That never happened. It was more like he was freezing to death, and then anyway. So we're not gonna talk about it. With the fly fishing thing, as I feel like I'm getting drawn closer to it, I'm excited to get out there and do it some more. But what I noticed when we were back there in Idaho was, that, and I haven't really kept up on it. So tell me, how are those fisheries, those cutthroat fisheries doing, and how are those populations on the rivers, and what has happened in the last 5 to 10 years in terms of any success stories or failures?
I think outside of Yellowstone National Park, the Snake River, that kind of comes out from, goes through Jackson and then into Palisades Reservoir, and then down from that has been an effort to get rid of the rainbows. They're probably a bigger threat to the genetic purity of the cutthroat than the browns are being predators on the cutthroat, because cutthroat and rainbow spawn at the same times, and they can inadvertently fertilize each other's eggs. And so once that happens, the hybrids are fertile, and so they can then spawn, and it can dilute the gene pool, and eventually you would lose a species. It would just be something different. And so rainbows are kind of targeted now on the Snake River. You can keep all of them. And if you want to eat fish, that's a good place to go right now.
And certainly that plays into our decision sometimes on if we keep them or not, right?
Okay.
Just trying to help out, preserve, certain genetics.
So that's cool. So where's your favorite place to fish? Now, don't tell us the actual GPS coordinates. Just let us know generally.
Oh boy, that's a hard question, Brian. I don't know if I was to ask Chad or you, your favorite place to hunt, because it changes. The scenery is one thing that usually never changes unless there's a fire.
Yeah.
But that's a good question. I might have to think about that for a second and defer to Chad on what that is, because it's a tough one.
I mean, for me, certainly a lot of good memories. When I think of fishing, Brian, I always go back to our little fishing hole on the Snake River. And maybe not so much because it was the best place to fish, although it was great, but all the memories there, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of hunters, will think back on hunting trips with fond memories. And if someone were to ask them the same question, they'd say, well, it's probably here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it wasn't all the success that they had, but the memories, the people that you're with, the scenery, God's beautiful country. But for me, I would say the Snake River in Idaho. And for all those reasons.
Was that the spot where I had to go in blindfolded?
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah, that was good.
I do like good man, Chad. Good man. Those are special places, I think. And if you a lot of times those places aren't the same as they used to be years later, and yet we still keep going back because of the history and that time there.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I'll be really quick with this, Brian, but I think anybody that fishes needs to go and float the Snake River in front of the Tetons. And I think you will catch fish, maybe not a ton, but the experience of being in front of those mountains and catching the fine spot cutthroat that are there, that's amazing.
What is your favorite time of year to hunt or to fish? I mean, what's your favorite what is the one season you really enjoy?
I think for me, it's Monday through Saturday. I really think that's my favorite.
Okay.
I could do
that
it.
a season?
Yes, that season.
Yeah, okay. I get it. If you could do it every day, you would.
Well, Jason has told me that historically, November, at least here in Utah, has been his money month for big fish, and we're upon it right now. So, certainly this is a great time to get out and fish, especially streamers.
So if we're gonna, we're coming here up on a close here. We've been going for a while. Before we go, I have a few more questions for you. One of them, though, is I need to hear a fish story. One where a hook is involved and some action, just any kind of fish story, and even a couple of them.
Wow.
A hook in a mouth?
Yeah, like a human's mouth. Yeah.
I was hoping to avoid this one.
Jason needs to tell that story.
Chad told me a little something about this. I need to hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Oh, and I felt like a horse's arse at the time. So this was coming, this experience, after I had just spent a couple years becoming a fly casting instructor. And so I had been practicing morning, lunch, after each meal, I don't know, just practicing casting.
Yep.
Got certified as a fly casting instructor and thought that I was pretty cool, and it was out on a friend's private lake, and he was showing me around, and we were on his boat, and he had put tiger muskie in this pond. Super nice guy. We were we were, I was making some long casts, and we were kind of in the middle of this pond. It is actually a pretty good sized pond, and I was trying to reach the shore. And
You're just floating out there? Are you waiting in a boat or?
Yeah, this is a kind of a pontoon boat.
Okay.
And it has a motor, and so he's motoring along just really slow. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, he kind of pushed us forward a little bit with the motor, gave it a little bit of gas, and I made this huge cast, and I'm just waiting for it to sail out there. Like, this is going to be awesome. Woo, I got this big old fly on, too. And I hear this. The line is just going all over in this overhanging canopy, and I'm trying to find it, and all of a sudden I hear this, oh! And I'm like, oh, crap. Somebody just got stuck. And I looked over at my friend, and it's not here or here. It's like in his mouth. It's like it went into his mouth, and it stuck on the side. And none of us know what to do. And his eyes are this big around, and I'm like, holy crap! What are the chances? Hole-in-one golfing would be.
Wow, you hooked him in the mouth.
Like the fly was just sticking out of his mouth. Not here, but like it went in and got caught in his cheek. So
aren't there like some kind of safety things you do with fishing, or is that just sort of out the window?
Oh boy, this one was out the window. Yeah, there was no safety precautions.
How'd you get it out?
We cut the line, and we tried to
get a catch and release.
But there was no
catch and release.
That's a tender area in the cheek. So yeah, one of his buddies that's a doctor numbed him up and took it out. But
how big was this hook?
It was probably a number 2. It was a good size hook. It was a bigger, like a 3-inch fly.
Wow.
So you can never be too careful or too skilled to be careful.
Okay, tell me another story. What's your most memorable fish that you've ever caught, besides the one on the wall behind you?
Yeah.
What stands out in your mind is like just the coup de grace of fishing experiences of success.
I think, and it's not hard for me to come up with this story. About 94, 95, really got into fishing these bigger flies. And I went to a small lake where tiger trout had been introduced. It was one of the first places in Utah where we had tiger trout. Now they're dispersed all over the state. And they were smaller at that time. But I loved catching them, and I did eat a couple. I was a poor college kid, and I did eat a lot of fish. And so this was the end of September, and it was a really early snowstorm, probably 2 feet on the ground. And I couldn't stay home. I wanted to go fish. So I drove up to this lake and started making these casts. I wasn't a very good caster at that point. And I just whacked myself in the head on a back cast and just stuck it right there. And I probably swore, conjugated all kinds of different words, sentences. I was pretty ticked off, and it was cold, and I hadn't had a hit all day. And I decided I'm going to make one more cast, and I'm out of here, after I had unhooked myself and kind of cleaned the fly a little bit. And I started stripping it with this anticipation, like something was about to happen. And this huge hit. And once you get one of these hits on a streamer, you're probably going to stick with it. It's that exciting. And I knew I had a good fish on because this one was just pulling line out, and all the other tigers that I had caught, hadn't done that. And I stayed with this guy for quite a while. It was a lot longer of a fight than normal. And when I got it up close to me, I knew right away that it was bigger than any tiger I'd seen. And I knew it was probably a state record. So I was so excited. You know the feeling of when you probably down a big animal. You're just stoked.
Yeah.
I ran back to my car through the snow with this big old fish and took it down, had it weighed, and it was a state record. That record has been beat by 12 pounds now. So we we have found that fish fed properly, and if it's allowed to grow, it can really attain some great weight. So, but that day was just kind of really sticks out as my streamer evolution from there.
That's pretty cool.
What's the fish?
It was almost 5 pounds, and at the time we were catching them under a pound, and so it really was like a big eye-opening fish at the time.
Wow.
It's funny. I remember the first giant fish I ever caught, like trout I ever caught. Chad was with me, and before we left the house, he lied to me and said he did grab his camera.
Of course.
Yeah, we're in the car, and I'm like, "You got your camera, right?" He goes, "Yeah, I got it." Because we're only going to break it out if we catch a monster. Chad lies and is like, he's not going to catch a big one anyway.
I think I was mistaken.
No, he lied. I distinctly remember because we get up there and I catch the biggest fish ever, and we're both in shock. And
And still
I'm
hear
like,
echoes of your hooping and hollering.
Brown trout, rainbow.
I'm like, grab the camera, Chad. Get that camera out. Finally, I'm going to prove to people. I'm going to show this fish. I'm like, it's just amazing, Yeah, about that. I didn't really bring it. Oh, dude, I was crushed. So the only witness I have to this fish and how amazing it was is Chad. And now I see Chad catching with you fish of that caliber all the time, so I don't feel so special anymore.
Hey,
So
the way we were fishing, that was a good score.
Yeah.
well, there's no photographical evidence, right? So was it 36? Was it 42? Well,
You're right in that range.
maybe some. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean, it was giant. I will tell you this: we cut it open. It had like 3 catfish in it, and like a little, like 4 or 5 inch trout in his belly. He just was a big eater.
Probably a 24, 26 incher. It was nice.
And we pulled the fish out of the middle, and I ate that one too. We were.
It's a little grossed out by that.
I didn't bother. Dude. It was freshly swallowed.
So a fish inside of the fish.
I got a 2 for 1, dude. I got a 2 for 1.
That's gritty.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
That's
gritty.
gritty.
There's a little backstory. We had this bright idea that we weren't going to pack food and we were going to live off the fish we caught. And we had been catching just for years tons of fish. Well, we got down there on this particular trip, and wouldn't you know it, the one time we don't bring food with us, we can't catch a fish for like 3 days. So we were darn hungry by the time we got that fish. So, yeah, I was going to eat that and whatever it ate, too. I mean,
That's awesome. That's a good story.
Yeah, on that trip, I would have eaten the fish inside the fish if we'd caught one.
yeah.
We were hungry.
Yep.
I think we lived on sunflower seeds and a pack of peanuts.
No, it was a little beef jerky and corn nuts.
Oh, yeah.
And to this day, corn nuts, they just taste good. I don't know.
Survival food.
That's right. Well, guys, I had a good time. I'm glad you guys were able to come on the podcast. Tell folks where they can find Dropjaw flies, and they can buy the flies. What is your plan for Dropjaw before we go? What is your vision for what you guys are doing? What are you trying to accomplish? And here it is before Christmas. It's a good time to buy some of these things if you guys, for those of you out there, and help Chad and Jason launch their company. Just a little shameless plug there. So tell us how are you guys? Where do you see this thing going now and then in 5 years? I mean, what is it you guys want?
Go for it.
Well, I think right now, this is just the beginning of something that could turn in. We hope to have many more products, and maybe not even associated with the heads or flies. But right now, you can buy a head pack 1 or head pack 2 or both. They have some really cool heads that you can make, just spruce up your flies with and give it a shot. The other thing is we have the baby whitey fly that's for sale, and this is tried and true. Browns, rainbows, cutthroat, There's 4 different color bases: tan, white, olive, grizzly.
A lot of the pictures that you see if you visit us on Instagram, we're caught with baby whitey here.
Okay.
So that is tried and true.
But yeah, apparel and other products that are in the works. But for right now, this is what we've got to offer the public is heads and flies.
So you're tying the flies yourself? Is that what's going on right now?
It won't always be like that, obviously, but right now I'm tying the flies. We produce all these heads. They're shiner heads, juvenile trout heads. This is a little dirty for the fly fishing community, but kind of an attractor pattern. Your chartreuse and your orange.
All of these heads are molded. We mold them, hollow them out, hand painted. So these are custom handcrafted heads. There's nothing like them out there.
Cool. Machined. We do it all by hand. So.
Wow, guys, that's pretty cool. I need to go fishing with you really soon. In fact, we're going to connect hopefully soon and get some fishing in together, and I'll film as much as I can because I want to give people. I love to make a little film out of it, and fishing's just gorgeous. And unlike deer and elk, you can actually film the action a little more easily than you can. You go on a 7-day hunt and not see a single close encounter with a deer, but on a fishing trip, you can capture that beauty as they're jumping out of the water. It'll be fun. It'll be really fun.
I'm excited to have you, Brian. We'll make that work out.
On your website, what is it?
It's www.dropjawflies.com.
Okay, and we'll put all that kind of stuff in the show notes. We'll put some links to the website and everything that you guys are offering. And go out there, you guys that are into fishing and fly fishing, and give it a shot. Do they have any like how-to stuff out there from you guys, like how to use this equipment, or is it kind of self-explanatory? That's how little I know about fly fishing.
It's good that you brought that up because we have talked about that too, and that's in the works. Filming a fly casting video with Jason here, showing the best techniques to throw these streamers, because these might be a little bigger than some guys are used to, and using the right weighted rod and line makes it a lot easier, as I have learned getting into fly fishing. So watch for that. That will be coming on our website.
Sure.
Cool.
And Brian, really quick too, these have enough weight that a spin guy can buy these and tie them on his spin rod and use them like a jig too. So I don't want to exclude anybody because they don't fly fish, because these will cross over.
How well do they work with that kind of rig? Pretty good?
They do. It would be just similar, like if they've used a tube jig or even a lead head jig. It's the same thing. There's the heads are weighted, and when they get in the water, they do dive.
Got it.
So yeah, you could just pull it back like a jig,
like a woolly bugger. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool, guys. Well, all right. Anything else you want to throw in?
Well, we appreciate it, and we look forward to feedback from guys. If you buy these, whether you tie or you want to buy the finished product, we welcome feedback, and we'd love to see pictures of big fish that you catch with them.
So where can people leave feedback?
They can follow us on Instagram, and we do a daily post where they can do feedback there, or on our website as well.
Do you guys have a Facebook?
We are on Facebook too.
Okay.
Interestingly, I've found I'd say 90% of the fishing community, for whatever reason, seems to be on Instagram opposed to Facebook, but we are on both.
Yeah, I think the hunting community in general has sort of outdoor hunting, fishing community is migrated toward Instagram. I think it's better. I think Facebook puts you in a hole, kind of. They want you to pay for, getting your content out and things like that. And it's not as I just think Instagram's more common too. Yeah.
Well, let's face it, we just like to see pictures of animals in nature.
And I don't want to hear about your kitty cat or, you know, what your kid said that was cute this morning. I just want to see your fish pictures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amen.
For sure.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll connect here soon. And stay gritty. All right.
Yeah, we'll be looking forward to it.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Bye.
Thanks. Man, but
bounce those pecs and let's hear this thing again.
If somebody looks close enough, they might be able to see like a little.
There's a little mouse running in there.
Oh, I love to do it. I mean, oh yeah.
Jaw flies.
Okay.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
We're Dropjaw Flies, and you're listening to
The Gritty Bowman. I'll hold him, brother.
Wow. Look at that pig. Okay. No room for a back cast. Yeah! There he is! Woo-hoo-hoo! I love these fish. There couldn't be a better place to land a fish. This was just made to happen right here. Let's take a look at this guy. Wow. Look at the teeth.
Holy smokes. It's a nice fish.
Yeah, taking it head deep. Yeah. Sweet. That looks like a nice one.
Nice brown, wild.
Yeah.
The drop jaw, of course.
Yeah.
Have a look.
Nice. Yeah, that's a pretty fish.
Nice wild brown. Beautiful colors.
No marks on him. You can tell he's wild, stream-born, of course, in Utah.
Yeah.
It's like to go down that.
All right, friends. Thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. Don't forget about our deal with Mountain Ops. Type in the word gritty at checkout and get 20% off until the end of the year. For those of you who have not seen the Full Draw Film Tour this year and want to go, check out their website for their tour schedule. And if you haven't done so, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel or to the Gritty Bowman TV podcast on iTunes or Podbean so you can see all the latest video content we have produced. And be sure to have a look at the new Elk 101 website where you can find our podcast and other great elk hunting content. Thank you for taking the time to leave us your feedback. We really appreciate your sincere support of our show. Finally, let me leave you with this quote by President Theodore Roosevelt, who in 1905 said, "In a civilized and cultivated country, wild animals only continue to exist at all when preserved by sportsmen. The excellent people who protest against all hunting and consider sportsmen as enemies of wildlife are ignorant of the fact that in reality, the genuine sportsman is by all odds the most important factor in keeping the larger and more valuable wild creatures from total extermination." Friends, always take the time to educate those around you about your role as a hunter in preserving the wild creatures of this world. If you don't, who will? As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.